Hello, this is Adam Jardy with the Columbus Dispatch. We are roughly 12 hours removed from the Columbus Blue Jackets pulling off arguably the most stunning sweep in NHL postseason history. And our beat writer, Brian Hedger, and I are here to break some of that down and try to make sense of what we just witnessed in these last four games in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And so, Brian, I know you got a couple of hours sleep last night. I think I'm in the same boat. I know you finished your five takeaways from the game. Would you start by sharing some of those with us? What did you take out of last night's game, which was unbelievable, almost beyond description, really?
It was, and I mean, there was a lot to take away out of that game, and like I just kind of started with a conversation I had with Captain Nick Foligno after the game, kind of after there was several of us there, but it was after like the main kind of crush of reporters had left him alone a little bit, and he with no cameras around, and he just kind of loosened up a little bit finally, and just kind of really shared. What all this the whole accomplishment of winning a series meant to him, and especially the guys. There's seven of them. I counted up today. There's seven of them who have been there for the last. Well, it would be like the last three playoff appearances, and they lost in the first round each time previously. So they had gone through the handshake line, the traditional handshake line that is in hockey at every playoff series at the end of it, and they had never experienced a winning version of it. And I asked him, what was that like going through as a winner this time, instead of having to congratulate some team and send them on their way. And I mean, he said it was bleeping great, and had a couple other words, but I mean, it was just interesting. He said he really gave a good kind of look into the mind of a hockey player who goes through one of these series and you lose. Because he said that at the first time it was like at the first thing he said was, you don't want to shake their hands. Like you don't want to go through the handshake line. He's like, he goes, it's the worst feeling in the world. You got to go there, and he goes, but you do it because it's hockey, and that's what you do, and you respect them, and everything, and so you wish them good luck. But it's the worst feeling in the world. And he goes, and this is completely the opposite. This is the best feeling in the world. You go through, and now you're getting the congratulations, and you're getting the go win the cup and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was really interesting, and I thought it was interesting that he also opened up about Blue Jackets fans, and also again the players who have been here a long time, and just some of the heartaches that they've all gone through together, including last year being up 2-0 in the playoffs, first round, and then letting that slip away, and through this whole series, none of them had really. And we've tried to ask them in a number of different ways, whether last year's, failure after being up 2-0 would give them any extra motivation this year. All denied it. No, we're not looking at history. We're not looking at back. But Nick said last night, he's like, everybody in this room was like, we're not going to let that happen again. And so it was nice to hear one of them, especially the captain, come out and just admit that, it hurt so bad last year that they were hanging on to that this year a little bit and saying there's no way it's happening again. And I think that helped power what happened, a crazy sweep like you mentioned.
I like you talking about the post-game handshake line. I liked watching. There was a clip of Bread trying to get Kucherov to shake his hand, and Kucherov had like no interest in it. You could see Bread taking some joy in that. I remember. I know I gave away some of my childhood fandom last night on our cannon fodder video that we did, but I remember the Red Wings taking a loss, and Claude Lemieux rearranged somebody's face on the bench, and I remember Dino Ciccarelli was asked about having to shake hands, and he said, I can't believe I had to shake that guy's friggin' hand.
Yeah.
And so,
it was Chris Draper, actually.
It was Chris Draper, that's right.
Who he hit into the boards face first. And
Yep.
It was like that was serious stuff.
That was bad.
It was bad. And I do remember that as well. And it was funny because I've seen, they have a documentary out now about Joe Louis Arena and a lot of the history. And they go over that and they talk to Ciccarelli. And Ciccarelli now has said, He's like, I didn't realize what had happened, what all had really happened to Chris Draper in his face when we went through the handshake line. And he goes, but I found out when I got back in the locker room, and then people started talking to me about it, and that's when he issued that quote where he said, I can't believe I just shook that guy's hand. I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, I mean that tradition is really, I think it's cool. I think it's one of the coolest things about hockey. That you go through these. I mean, listen, Nick Foligno was sucker punched in Game 3 in a scrum, a gloved punch by Steven Stamkos, but a sucker punch nonetheless. Didn't see it coming, and he took a major offense to it. And I know he shook Stamkos' hand. I mean, because that's just what you do when you go through that line. But I asked him, I said, "Did you guys talk?" And he said, "No. We'll talk next year." He said, "We'll talk next year." And then he said, and he kind of laughed and he goes, "And we probably won't talk." So there's that. And then, I talked a little bit in takeaways today about the French connection, with, Alexander Tessier, the rookie, 19-year-old rookie, scores 2 goals yesterday. And then his new best friend is Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's only 20. They're the 2 youngest guys in the team, and Dubois is from Quebec. And so he grew up, speaking French Canadian. He's a French Canadian. He speaks French. It's kind of like their version of French.
Right.
And so, it's almost that difference between, our version of English and British proper English. It's that kind of thing. But you can communicate with people, and so they're roommates. For the road trips throughout these playoffs, they're going to be roommates, and they get along really well. They scored some huge goals last night. You know. And then, as you noted, they became the 11th and 12th different players on this roster through the first 4 games to score a goal. So, this team's got all kinds of scoring depth, and I got into that a little bit as well. There's just a lot to take away from this one. Bob, how about Bobrovsky?
How about Bob?
Yeah, what about Bob?
Yeah,
in
right.
This series?
I hated that movie.
Yeah, well, I actually kind of liked it, but only once or twice.
To each their own. But
yes,
when I came on to start helping out for the postseason, Brian, you've been covering or carrying the mail for us for so long. Basically all season, a one-man show, just churning out content, churning out stories. And I mean, if you want to know what's happening with the team, you're the best guy to follow with that. And it was when I jump in and they're like, "Hey, you're going to Tampa." I've been reading your work, but I haven't been intimately involved like you have with the ins and outs and the daily grind of the team. And so the thing that I picked up from you very early on was how tall of a task this was for the Jackets going in. I mean, from the power play to the penalty kill to scoring 103 more goals than their opponents this season. I mean, Tampa was just rolling guys, and there was very little expectation that the Jackets would win the series, much less there'd be a sweep and they'd be on the good side of it. Right. I just wonder, as you have now watched these games unfold, I mean, I came into it from the mindset of what you had expressed to me and then doing my own research. But I just wonder how impressive this is to you as you sit here and look at what they've accomplished and what it's like for you to be covering, when you spend day in and day out with a team for 6 months, what it's like for you to see them get over that hurdle to do something that's never been done before.
Well, it is amazing. You don't really get the full grasp of it until you really sit down and start looking at some of the things that the Lightning were able to do in this regular season. You touched on some of them. They scored 325 goals, I believe, this season, which is a massive number of goals. They had 3 40-goal scorers, which is almost unheard of on the roster. They had the number 1 ranked penalty kill in the NHL. They had the number 1 ranked power play in the NHL. Like you said, they had 103 more goals scored than they gave up.
That's my favorite stat.
That's unbelievable. I mean, they're not the only team that's ever done it, over 100, but there's very few. They were, I think it's only the second team, and the other one was the Red Wings in 95, 96, I believe, to win 62 games. And I believe they're only one of 4 or 5 teams to have gotten over 125 points. So they finished with 128 points in the regular season. So they basically just completely marauded, dominated their way through 82 games in the regular season. And then they don't win a single playoff game. not
Right.
one.
Right.
And they started off so well for them, like they started off with a 3-0 lead. It looks like Sergei Bobrovsky for the Blue Jackets is a little shaky starting out. He gives up 3 goals on 13 shots. The Blue Jackets are, discombobulated, skating all over the place. They have no idea what they're doing. And then it just all changes. They come out in the second period, and it's a completely different team. It's a completely different Bobrovsky. Right from the start, 24 seconds into the second period, he makes just an amazing save on Nikita Kucherov, who had 128 points himself this season. Just ridiculous numbers out of this Tampa team. That was a for sure goal. As soon as you saw Steven Stamkos pass that puck over, it's a 2-on-0. There's no defenseman in front. It's two Lightning players, two of the best Lightning players, two of the best players in the NHL against Sergei Bobrovsky. That's it. And you got to figure, okay, that puck's going in the net, and it's going to be 4-0. And now the route is on. He just makes just an amazing pad save there, where he just sprawls out, just gets his left leg out far enough, and stops the puck and then covers it. And then 24 seconds after that, Kucherov hits the crossbar. If that one goes in, it's 4-0. So you got to get a little puck luck.
That was loud. You could hear that in the press box. You heard that ping.
Yes, from way up in the press box, exactly. And after that, the Jackets just kind of used that momentum, and they just kept chipping away. Before you know it, they had this game tied. And I remember you and I were just like, "Are you kidding me on this?"
Yeah.
And then they and I was downstairs by that point, I know, but yeah, they tie it, they win that game, and I think Matt Duchene last night, he referenced that whole sequence I just talked about, and the comeback. And he basically said something last night I thought was interesting, where he said, if we go into that first intermission down 1-0, he goes, I don't think we're sitting here right now like with a sweep. We might win the series, but it's not a sweep. He seemed to think that they gained so much confidence just by overcoming that 3-0, that horrible first period, and then overcoming that lead and then winning that game. That basically filled them with confidence for the rest of the series. And they said, you know what? These guys have done all this stuff that everyone's talked about. We just beat them. And they were up 3-0 on us,
Yeah. There's a very early Simpsons episode where Bart Simpson gets in a fight on the playground with Nelson, and he hits Nelson, and someone says to Nelson, "Hey, you're bleeding." He's like, "No, I usually get other people's blood on me when I fight." And then he looks down and realizes that Bart bloodied his nose, and he says to Bart, "You made me bleed my own blood." And that popped in my head when I thought about what the Jackets did in that first game, and I'd wondered if we would see them come out like Nelson and be the bully going forward, but they were just never able to do it. I mean, the Jackets took them out of it in the second game. And then I know we had a little bit of a discussion, you and I and Michael Ares, our fantastic columnist, who at Michael Ares1 on Twitter, you should be following him. But a little conversation coming out of that, wondering what we were going to see when we got back to Columbus. And I think he thought the Jackets would win game 3, lose game 4. I felt the sweep was coming at that point. That's how, just watching the Jackets play
after they won game 3.
After they won game 2, I thought very confident when you saw Kucherov with the hit on Nudavara, and you just felt like it was unraveling for them. You heard John Cooper, their coach, say that we haven't faced adversity all year. This is the 5-alarm fire, and I just thought
5-alarm fire.
This is not a team that knows what to do or how to figure this out. And you felt like a suspension was coming for Kucherov. And the Jackets they were no different than the first interview session I walked into to start the postseason. Just that it was business as usual. And what has Torts said so many times? You do the math. This is game 3. This is game 4. Like it makes for very boring stories, but to me, it just seemed like they knew what they were doing. And they weren't too flustered by it. So now I wonder, we don't know who they're going to play next, but I just wonder what you think this next week is going to be like for them. If it's a good thing for them to have some time to recuperate, and maybe you get Ryan Murray healthy, maybe you bring in the Russian kid that they signed, maybe Nudavara, who presumably gets healthy. They'll have some time away from the rink, which I think might be a good thing. But man, they're hot right now. I wonder if it's going
Yeah.
to be hard for them to take their foot off the gas and then hit the accelerator again.
Yeah, I had that same thought last night as well as I was driving home from the arena. Because it's going to be a while, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, even best case scenario for them as far as you the next time they'll play and trying to make it as quick as possible. I mean, the Maple Leafs are only up 2-1 in the series, so they have to still win two more games. So if they win the next two, great. That's still going to take 4 or 5 days. It's going to take probably 4 days or whatever. And then you got probably time between then if some other series goes seven or something. You're going to have some time. At this point, they have. I mean, nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw a sweep coming for the Blue Jackets, and I don't think they saw. I don't think they could see it coming. They
no,
were just like you said. They have just been game to game to game to game, and that's how they're going to approach it. I think from the health side of things, as you mentioned, I think it's going to be great for them. To be honest with you, I mean, Ryan Murray is skating again. He's at least trying it, seeing if he can, get his. I mean, I think we can say it now. It's been reported several different places. It's a back injury. So I
right,
think he's trying to get that, definitely trying to get that whipped into shape and get it back, to where he can play. So any kind of time off will help that. Nudavara, you got to figure that's going to help out. I mean, you have to presume that's probably a concussion or concussion issues. His head really it hit the boards really hard
that was a
on
nasty
the
play.
Kucherov thing. That was awful. I mean, not only did Kucherov trip him,
Right,
but
he
before
followed
he
him.
can even, yes, he stalks him, he follows him, and then before he can get to his feet, he slams him into the boards, and his head hits the boards. That was ugly. And if he had any prior history of that, probably would have gotten more than one game, I think. But he didn't really have a prior history of that, and got one game, and I think that was warranted. He obviously clearly kind of lost his mind there,
Right,
and frustration boiled over. So yeah, I mean, I think the time off could help from a health standpoint, but you do have to wonder: are they going to be as fired up, ready to go, on point as they were entering the playoffs right after? I mean, they had to win. They went into that last weekend having to win in their minds both those games, and they did win both those games. But they clinched the playoffs in game 81 of 82.
right,
So it took them right to the end to get in, and then they just rolled that in. Now what happens when you have some time off?
right, right. Well, I guess we'll find out. I guess that's what they pay us for. We'll have multiple.
We'll be there.
Yeah, we'll have every angle covered as always. I mean, if you're not following
We'll
Brian
be
Hedger
doc-
on Twitter,
we'll be
at
documenting the Simpsons analogies as much as possible.
well, and then I also got to get in, my music references. I mean, I've been tweeting the
Sure.
link to Oasis's "The Shock of the Lightning" this entire postseason, wondering if that would come to fruition. I also was reminded that there's a great song by the Arctic Monkeys called "Crying Lightning." So I guess
Ah,
our
we'll
view
have to check that out today.
our viewers, our readers, our listeners. I mean, we're coming at people in pretty much every dimension we can. Like we can let them make up their minds. They're both fantastic songs, and they're both applicable today. So crank out the Shock of the Lightning, crank out Crying Lightning, and follow Brian Hedger on Twitter at Brian Hedger. The Jackets? I think won't have any media availability until Friday. I think is what we're kind of feeling, but
Yeah, I think it's
we
Friday.
got so much stuff out of the locker room. We'll have plenty of stories. There's, I don't know, a dozen new stories on our website this morning on dispatch.com. So
Yeah.
make sure you're checking us out there. We're going to get going because we got more things to write. But thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for reading. Hopefully everyone enjoyed everything that we brought this week. And
Another prop.
my
Another broom. I love it.
child's cleaning kit has never come in more handy. So
Never.
I think this is probably the best time to sign off. So for Brian Hedger, I'm Adam Jardy with the Columbus Dispatch. Thanks for listening. Thanks for reading. Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you all soon.